But let's cut to the chase. How much money will Bad Bunny earn from doing the Super Bowl halftime show?
Yes, the answer is not zero, but it's extremely close. The NFL and Apple Music don't pay their artists to perform for the Super Bowl. He will be receiving a SAG-AFTRA mandated minimum. For Usher a few years ago, it was like $671. So something in that ballpark. For Bad Bunny, essentially negligible. And on top of that, a lot of Super Bowl artists, we don't know in the case of Bad Bunny, but past Super Bowl artists have invested additional money on top of the budget that the NFL and Apple are willing to put up for the show in order to increase the spectacle, make it as big and as grand as possible. So, in a lot of cases, artists lose money performing on the Super Bowl, which is crazy until you realize the boost that you mentioned before that all artists receive from playing the game. I mean, hundreds of percentage boost on their Spotify streams. Obviously, like if you're Rihanna and you can sneak in a Fenty Beauty, plug, then that can, raise the profile of that brand. And so, yeah, there is more than enough things to make it worth it for these artists. And like I said, the fact that they have been able to get these artists despite not paying them shows that everyone thinks it's absolutely worth it without the payday.
The piece in your story that talked about how artists have invested their own money and resources into making it a bigger spectacle was surprising to me, and perhaps it shouldn't be. We cover this every year, but how much money have we seen other artists pour into that show? And do the NFL and Apple Music contribute nothing to that?
So the NFL and Apple Music cover the cost of the show, or at least to a point. And I think that in the case of most artists, they cover the entire expense of the show. We don't know exactly what that would be. I think using comps to like what a Coachella headlining show would be, I'm thinking roughly in the range of around $10 million to put one of these shows on. But artists like The Weeknd and then Dr. Dre and all the artists that performed at the LA Super Bowl a few years ago said they put an additional $7 million of their own money into that show to really supersize it, to really make it everything that they want. And that's not as uncommon as you would think. I did a story a few years ago on Metro Boomin, who, when he was going to perform at Coachella, invested, I think it was about $5 million of his own money into that show. And I think these artists see that really you do these huge performances not for paydays, but just for maximum exposure. For Metro Boomin, he's going to play at Coachella. That's taking my, public stature to another level, and I want to make sure I capitalize on that with something that's going to be extremely memorable. And so, yeah, in the case of Dr. Dre, they're riding in a car across the stage. You have 50 Cent hanging upside down. All these crazy things. I think everyone remembers the weekend going through that tunnel of lights where he was like walking very dazed and confused through that. So these are memorable moments that we remember. We remember Katy Perry riding the elephant that was like metallic, or Lady Gaga coming down from the top of the stadium. And so, these kind of like once in a lifetime moments as an artist, you really want to take advantage of them. And again, like I said, you have essentially the entire country and a large portion of the world all watching you either live or, on YouTube the next day. And so you really, really want to make the best impression possible.
Or in the years since. I have watched the Rihanna performance choreographed by Paris Goebel so many times because that dance, it was so clean. That choreography was so sharp, and as a dancer, it's one of my favorite in recent memory. But you mentioned it's basically a 15-minute commercial. What are the ad rates this year? So what would that translate to for Bad Bunny, just performing for 15 minutes and not even counting the replays that you and I were just talking about?
No, absolutely. I mean, there's no ad breaks during the show, so Bad Bunny doesn't get any economics of that. However, the thing I will say is when Nielsen reports out, how many people watch the Super Bowl each year, the halftime performance is oftentimes the high point of that. Like I think last year was around like 118 million for the game average, but then the halftime performance was like 135 million. So people tune in for the halftime show. Even people who, that there's a very small percentage, but who aren't watching the game, then tune in and make sure they watch the halftime show. So it really is like the peak of it. And I'm sure if you look at the ad rates, I don't know if we've seen it this year yet, but every year we do get that, how much a 30-second spot in the Super Bowl could be. I wonder if those spots around before and after the halftime show are even more expensive because it really, in a lot of ways, is kind of like the centerpiece of the game. Well, literally, it's the centerpiece of the game, but for a lot of folks, that is kind of like the highlight of the game. And so, yeah, you really have the entire world's attention. I mean, you can't, in some ways, really put a full number on what the exposure of the Super Bowl game is. You can say, if you're Nielsen, that 135 million people are watching it concurrently. That kind of is a fuzzy number based on what we're guessing some co-viewing is, or in large venues, how many people could be watching. And then you get, another 150, 200 million views on YouTube. So that's more people. I think with Bad Bunny, there's the global aspect of it. And so my point is you can't even really quantify exactly how many people will see this show if you're Bad Bunny. Just know that it will be the most of your entire career. So you really, really want to showcase the best of yourself.
Now, your story does get into the streamings boost and the touring boost that Kendrick Lamar received after his halftime performance last year. Can you share what you found there?
Yes, Spotify is very proud to put out each year kind of what the streaming boost is before and after the Super Bowl game. And oftentimes it's in the 3, 4, or 500% increases for a lot of these artists. Last year, Kendrick Lamar as an artist only went up 175% because he was kind of already on fire before the Super Bowl. But his song "Not Like Us" went up 430% in streams after the game. And like I said, think about all the people who have probably streamed Bad Bunny in the lead up to the Super Bowl. So those numbers are probably already rising. So from that point to after the game, again, quadrupling your streams, and that's a temporary thing. I mean, that won't be, of course, your new normal, you could say. But obviously, both a direct financial benefit from that, although a lot of artists would say not enough. They get fractions of a penny for each one of those streams, right? But not only that, yeah, it raises your profile. Like you mentioned, Kendrick Lamar, who went on a stadium tour last summer after the Super Bowl game with SZA, and really there haven't been any. I mean, you could say Eminem, but he was with other artists. There haven't really been a lot of hip hop artists who have been able to sell out stadiums. And Kendrick Lamar and SZA had, the second highest grossing concert tour of 2025 on the back of the Super Bowl show, only behind Beyonce, who is pretty good at selling tickets. So I think you can make absolute one-to-one, direct comparisons or translations between playing the Super Bowl game, raising your profile, and being able to do things like play stadium shows or, stream more music.
Now,